Hey there, scholars. Okay, we're in the last of this look at Aristotle's Politics. This is the one where it gets real jumbled toward the end here, the last parts of the book. Book 1 about the household, book 3 about the state are sort of the key ones, and then you get in, book 2 is about the problem with Plato and utopias, and book, what we're doing now, 4 through 8 involve this search for, what is the best constitution. Let's get it here. Let's get, what's this best constitution going. So, and here he throws out a lot of what he considers more practical advice, and so we want to look at this. Now, first and foremost is this, this pursuit, what we're doing is we're pursuing this happy life here, okay? And in the happiness, what we really need to remember is this Aristotelian principle of the middle class. And this is what makes things the best. And so, the key here is, great then is the good fortune of a state in which its citizens have moderate and sufficient property. This is going to define the middle class, and this is what defines the middle class for us in the United States. Many a president has judged how well their presidency supported the stability of the nation and the best interest of the nation by did the middle class get to increase by owning property? Was home ownership on the increase or home ownership on the decline? Home ownership should be widespread because that then brings stability, that brings then this goodness and happiness, and it defines a very strong middle class, all right? The fear here, and what he does is that there's this dynamism between the rich and the poor, okay? And it says, of these two, one grow violent and great criminals, and that's the poor. The poor head that direction, and the other into rogues and petty rascals, and that's the rich. Basically, the rich are committed to self-interest, are looking out for themselves, and that's how they become rogues and rascals. And the poor then get forced into a corner, and they're in trouble, and then they become either violent or criminal or something like that. And so the poor, and then slavery over here, and then the rich. So the best is in the middle class, and this is where people are most free. See, that's the interesting thing. You're most free in this middle class, and then the rich become, causing trouble. And when the rich get richer, poor get poorer. The slavery, less private ownership of land, that becomes a big problem. This is the foundation then of a good, strong middle class. And then he looks back and he talks more about this middle class, and especially how it's rarely supreme, but he does see people like Solon and Lycurgus, who we've talked about, as great wise men pushing for a middle class. Okay. And then we keep on, always here, this best form of government is the thing we're most interested in, and it comes in varieties of ways depending upon who it is. Let's go into book 7 here, and with book 7, we're still, let us assume what's about the best life, for both individuals and states is the life of virtue. Okay, and so now he's very interested in pursuing this virtue and what it constitutes. Okay, and then you get to something like real interesting discussions about what's here again, what should be the conditions of the ideal and perfect state, and as for size, as for the number of citizens, it's where does he get down here? Beauty is realized in the number of magnitude of a state, which combines its magnitude and order must necessarily be beautiful. Beauty is basically this balance, this goodness, and fundamentally It's where he argues for a relatively small state here, because if you look over here, what he's saying is, if the citizens of the state are to judge and distribute offices according to merit, this is a democracy, and this is where the citizenry is active. This is where you have a lot of people who are free, and these free people are making the decisions in the state. Well, they need to know each other's characters, and so it needs to be small enough so people know each other. And this is, a goal of the beautiful, beautiful state. All right, and so as for size and extent, it should be as to enable citizens to live temperately and liberally and in the enjoyment of leisure. Okay, he is generally in favor of smaller states that are moderate in size, not this sort of huge place. On the other hand, is and this is a weird part here, but it's very influential throughout history, is where he starts to talk about, why the Greeks are so great. And he becomes an advocate. He's definitely an advocate for the Greeks are great. And that people to the north, where it's cold, are wanting in intelligence and skill. But they are good at keeping their freedom. Okay? People in Asia are intelligent. And here he's talking about more south of Greece, into what is Asia. I suspect he's talking in what we would call the Middle East. Are wanting in spirit and therefore always in a state of subjection and slavery. He's talking probably, Persians in his mind at this point. But the Hellenic, which is the Greek. Okay, Greek is Hellas, they're high-spirited and also intelligent. Hence, continue to be free and the best governed of any nation. He's very pro-Greek here, very pro-Greek. And then he actually makes a statement which, that would be able to rule the world. That might play badly with Alexander, who's one of his students. Alexander the Great wants to rule the world as this Greek. But on the other hand, that takes us a whole nother direction. But here he gets this. This is, you should just see this. I note that it happens. We are not advocating for any of this. Just note that it's out there. And this is some of the sources for a lot of this talk that goes on throughout history. And let's move on here to, look at this, where he starts to talk about marriage. Okay, legislatures should be involved in thinking about, when you can get married and when you can't. In our country, we have age limits and stuff, when you cannot get married younger than this, and and stuff like that. Aristotle, of course, goes, when you read this, he goes much more into these regulations, and he does, about how young offspring of the young are small and ill-developed and generally female. This is kind of the weirdness too of when he gets into these other books he writes on biology. He'll say a lot of stuff. Women should marry when they are about 18 years old, and men at 7 and 30. So, 18-year-olds should marry a 37-year-old, right? And then he talks about the other things, and it's all has to do with procreation of children and stuff, and then the goal here in this the background to everything is the proper state that promotes people being free people, okay. And, I give it to you partly because some of you might be interested in these household rules that come out of the ancient world. The Bible has them, Romans have them. Here's Greek examples of basically people who want to regulate marriage and they regulate marriage out of state. This is a long-standing tradition of civilization. And there are many reasons for it, why they need to regulate it. As to adultery, let it be disgraceful for any man or woman to be unfaithful. This is Aristotle, this is Rome, this is the Bible, is there, if you think in terms of comparing and looking at these different things, it is interesting that, like this idea we have today in the United States of a right to privacy and these extreme views of marriage and such. These are the dynamism of having the state being very involved in regulating these is a grand old tradition. Now, the most grand old tradition is what he gets into here with public education. And let's go on, and in book 8 here, this is, the citizens should be molded to suit the form of government. Woo-hoo! This is the basis then of public education. So education should be the business of the state. This is why the state gives funding for you as college students and stuff like that. The state's in the business, and they accredit at PLNU. We're not like some private school doing whatever we want. We have a lot of rules and regulations so that we support the state. And the goal of the state is to create these freemen in the best state. The freemen, this is what that liberal education means. And they're right there. What are the liberal arts? Quite proper for a freeman. As far as I know, this is the oldest statement of the term liberal arts, which is, liberal arts is a more Latin statement. In Greek, it's therion, actually, ergon. There, look at that. This is a freedom. This is the standard word for freedom. The Bible and all over the place, in Herodotus and stuff like that. Eleutheria. Ergon is works. And so this is like the freedom works, the freedom crafts, proper for a freeman. Okay? And this is the foundation of what we're doing in our class. We are a liberal arts institution teaching a liberal education. And then he proposes a curriculum. Reading and writing, gymnastics, this is communication between people. This is keeping your body in order. Drawing, that's another form of communication. But then music, and so music is sort of the key to pulling together. Over here, use. Here, music for intellectual enjoyment in leisure. And I come back to you with that term leisure is the root for scholar, schola. Schola is this Latin and Greek term for leisure, and so music is the intellectual enjoyment of leisure. The liberal arts are, and this is this concern for leisure that's throughout here, is that the scholar, the freeman, is a person who is leisured to the extent that they can get educated, and then with education they can create a good state. So I leave it with that with you. As I've said, read through this. You are not required to memorize this sort of stuff. I'm not going to get nitpicky about it all. I'm not going to say, what did Aristotle say about this or that? But on the other hand, it's big picture about what's the household and how is the household different than a state, and then how the state pursues goodness and then especially this notion of freedom and stability that supports the goodness.